All right, looks like we've got our attendees here, so let's go ahead and get started. Again, my name is Sarah, and I taught high school in Richmond, California. I taught a remedial math class as well as chemistry. And during my time as a teacher, I was really excited about bringing inquiry-based lessons into the classroom, and I brought that excitement here to Front Row, where I am a content writer, and I would like to share my excitement for inquiry-based lessons with you today. So if you want a more in-depth picture of what inquiry-based lessons really are, if you want an in-depth about them, we have another webinar as well that tells more about why we should use them. But just for a quick overview, the inquiry-based lessons that we have are a really good cross-curricular way to teach math. So they bring in science standards, they bring in social studies standards, bring in real-world concepts into your math classroom, and they really engage students to critically think and engage them in active learning. So we're not just telling them formulas and having them plug and chug, but they're figuring out these concepts for themselves. So for example, we're not just going to tell them the formula for a perimeter, but we're going to give them a real-world scenario, such as building a fence, in which they must activate any prior knowledge and work together with their classmates in order to come up with the how to figure out the perimeter. So it's really about the process and not just about plugging and chugging and getting the correct answer. And this is what really lasts in learning too. So with that said, let me go ahead and show you how Front Row's inquiry-based lessons work, and this will give you a better idea of why to use them in the classroom as well. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to share my screen with you here, and we will go to our teacher dashboard. Okay, so on your teacher dashboard, to find these inquiry-based lessons, you'll go to our group lessons page. Let me maximize our screen here. And once you're here, you'll see, if you just kind of scroll through, you'll see that these inquiry-based lessons, as I said, they cover many different topics. So over here we have jungle animals, we have artist apprenticeship. So there are many different real-world science, social studies topics, but all of them are associated with a Common Core math standard. If you would like to search for something specific that you're teaching in your class, we're going to go to the top of the page here. And there's a couple different ways you could search. So let's say I'm teaching decimals in my classroom. I can go ahead and I can search to find all of our lessons that have to do with the decimals. So we have one about comparing decimals, operations with decimals, and so on. And I could take a look at each of these and decide which one fits in best with what I would like to teach in my classroom. I can search by math topic. I could also search by the science or social studies or whatever concept I am interested in bringing into the classroom. So let's say we are doing a unit about opening up businesses. So I'm going to search for any lessons that have to do with business here. And then I can see which of these might fit well with my math curriculum as well as my social studies curriculum. So maybe we're talking about the stock market already, or I want to talk about that. And I could choose this lesson. So we can search by math concept, by the topic here. We can also search by a particular standard. So let's say I already know that I need to teach or I want to review the standard 2OA1. I can search for that and I can find that lesson right here. And another way we can search, so you can use all of these, you can also do filters by grade level. So I saw some of us here, we teach 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th grade. So I can select 5th grade. I can see all of our 5th grade lessons. And as you can see, there are a lot here. There are a lot that we have available free to use, that you don't need to purchase school edition. So you can all use many of these free ones that we have. And then we have a few that are paid that you can use with school edition. And again, there are many here, but there are also lots more coming. And we will have all of the Common Core standards covered that are ready to be released in about January by the time you come back from break. So it'd be a good time to start using these in your next semester. Again, you can search by grade. You can also kind of cross-search these. So I can search for a topic, a particular topic, and I can search by grade level at the same time. So again, let's say I want to teach multiplication. Search for something different here. So I can see all the lessons that involve multiplication. You can see some are third grade, some are fourth, some are fifth grade. If you want to just search for the ones that are third grade, you can click there and filter to find the multiplication lessons for third grade. So I encourage you to do some searching here, explore what fits in well. You can use these in many different ways in your classroom. It could either be what you're teaching at the moment. It could be something you want to preview that you'll be teaching soon, that you want to give students some exposure to so that they really grasp it by the time that you're ready to teach it in your classroom again. You could also use these to review, whether it's for a test or whether it's just something you want to remediate, something that you need to reteach that your kids didn't quite get the first time around. So these are really flexible for you to use however you want to in your classroom. So I'm going to show you a lesson here about comparing decimals. And we'll take a look at how this works. Each of the inquiry-based lessons that we have here are set up in a similar way. So this one, again, like I said, it's on comparing decimals. It's a fifth grade lesson. And this is one of our free lessons available for you even without school edition. So when you decide that this is the lesson you want to teach, the preparation is really minimal. It's just going to take 10 to 15 minutes for you to look over this lesson. So you'll get to this page, you'll see what this lesson covers. Make sure that this is what you want to teach. So it has the standard that it's aligned with here. It tells us the topic, and then a little snippet of what students are going to be doing in this lesson. So in this lesson, students will be comparing decimals, to the thousandth place as they plan scuba diving trips. And this shows again how it's really a cross-curricular experience, because they're not just learning how to compare decimals, but it's comparing decimals and it's a real-world scenario, planning a scuba diving trip. So each of these lessons is broken up into 3 to 5 days. You can either teach these directly 3 to 5 days within 1 week, or some people break them up and do 1 lesson a week. Again, it's flexible for you to use however you want. But for each day of the lesson, should take up an hour in your class. So each lesson starts with either a number talk, just to get kids talking about math, to activate their knowledge from the previous day's lesson. And after that daily review or the number talk, then the inquiry is introduced through a short video. And this part of the lesson is really engaging for students. So I'll show you what one of those videos looks like in just a second. But the video is where the inquiry is presented to the students. So it tells them about their scuba diving trip or whatever the scenario is. It puts them in that scenario, and it gives them the problem they need to solve without actually asking them the question. And I'll show you what I mean by that in just a second. But it doesn't directly ask them the question. So after they watch that video and figure out the scenario, figure out what they're trying to do, then you'll come together as a class and you'll say, okay, what is the question that we need to answer based on this scenario? Once we figure out the question, then students will work in small groups And so groups of about 3 to 4, you can organize these groups however you'd like to. So you can make heterogeneous groups with kids of different levels. And that's really good for developing leadership in the classroom as kids help each other fill in gaps in their knowledge and have different background knowledge that they can bring into their group. You could also organize the kids into groups of the same level. And if there's maybe a group that you would like to work with more closely the whole time, you can organize those however you'd like. But ideally, they're working in small groups because talking to their classmates is really important. And these lessons facilitate really amazing student talk. So it's really cool to walk around as your students are working and hear them explaining things to their classmates as they try to figure out the inquiry here. Then at the end of the lesson, students will present, explain, and critique their methods. So what I mean by that is that each group might have a different approach to solving the inquiry. And so each group will present the way in which they solve the inquiry and explain why they chose to do that. And then you'll kind of come to a consensus as a class and make sure everyone understands the concept for that day. So again, this really gets kids talking about what they're doing, talking about whether it's comparing decimals, multiplication, whatever it is. And by having them talk about this and activate their prior knowledge, these concepts really stick with them a lot better than just throwing formulas at them during math. So that's just what a basic day is set up like, and I'll show you in detail in just a minute here. But again, is super minimal for these. I'll show you how to print out the inquiry sheets that you'll give to your students to work on during the inquiry. And then we'll review a daily presentation together. And that's really all that the prep is for these. So this lesson that we're looking at is a 3-day lesson. Again, they can range from 3 to 5 days. Let's take a look at day 1 of this lesson. We're going to go here, click Start Lesson. And each lesson has a presentation that you can show on your projector. We'll look at day 1, and then each lesson also has an inquiry sheet that you can print out and make copies of for your students. So let's take a look at the presentation. So again, this is our lesson on scuba diving in lakes and oceans, comparing decimals, and this is just our day 1 presentation. So it'll start with a daily review that I was talking about. And this, on the first day, it's a number talk. The other days are reviewing from the previous days. But the number talk is to get kids talking about different ways that they could solve this problem. So kids might have different strategies for solving this particular subtraction problem. So you'll ask them to solve it in their heads. And then you'll come together as a class and select a few students randomly to ask them how they solved this and get them, this is to kind of get them in the mode of explaining what they're doing so we can facilitate that student talk throughout the inquiry. Then we show them the video to introduce the inquiry that I was talking about. So let me go ahead and play the day 1 video of our scuba diving lesson here.
Your family friend recently asked you to go on a scuba diving trip with her. Scuba diving is an activity in which you can breathe underwater using an oxygen tank and a mask. Many people enjoy scuba diving because it allows them to explore a world that most never get to see. The world under the surface of oceans and lakes. Your friend is on a lifelong quest to go scuba diving in the deepest lakes in every country on Earth. Even though she is unable to swim to the bottom of these lakes because the pressure difference is too much for a human being to take, she is astounded by how massive these lakes truly are. She hands you a list of the next 5 countries she will be visiting, along with the 2 deepest lakes in those countries and their measurements. She heads out to get you some scuba gear and asks you to plan out the trip while she's gone.
All right. So apologies if that looks a little bit choppy on your screens. It might be the internet connection there. But you can always rewatch this video and preview it again on your own screen if you didn't quite get to see that. But again, so this is just to introduce the scenario. It tells students kind of what they want to do. They want to plan out this trip, but it doesn't directly ask them anything. And they're going to be comparing decimals. So I'll show you the inquiry sheet that has the 5 countries and the lakes from each country. But it's not directly asking them to compare the decimals here. It's not saying that to them which of these decimals is greater than the other. It's just asking them to plan out this trip. So we'll see how we develop those questions next. So we show them the video. You can play this a couple times to make sure students get all the key points here, and so they can ask any questions in between the 2 times. Then we'll pass out our inquiry sheets, which again I'll show you in just a second here. And then you'll determine the purpose of the activity and what students are trying to do in their groups. So we'll ask a couple of guiding questions here to get students to be able to figure out the question that they want to solve. So we have, what does your friend want to do? So we know that she wants to go scuba diving in the deepest lakes here. And then the next guiding question, how can you help your friend plan her trip? So again, these guiding questions are just to guide students to the suggested questions that we have next. So we want them to figure out what questions we're trying to answer in today's inquiry. And as you can see, then we have 3 suggested questions. So we always have kind of a floor and a ceiling question here. So how should we determine which lake to visit in each country? We want the first question here to be one that all students can answer. The second question is kind of the most direct question that we want them to answer based on this inquiry. So in which lakes should you go scuba diving in each of the 5 countries? That's our main question. And then we have a bonus question for students who need more of a challenge. So once we figured out the questions we want to answer from the inquiry, then we form our groups of 3 to 4. And students can be working on the floor, they can be working at their tables. You can organize this however you'd like to in your classroom. And then we give groups some positive group discussion guidelines to make sure that everyone's participating, showing respect, that everyone's focused on the task, that one person's speaking at a time, and that we have really positive group interactions going on here. Because again, that's a huge part of this, is the students critically thinking and working together. And if they have these positive group discussion guidelines and they're talking about the math, they're going to understand the math more, but they're also going to develop leadership qualities, they're going to develop critical thinking, and so many more. So once they're set to go, then they have about 10 minutes to work on this inquiry. And we just kind of let them use any strategies they have based on their prior knowledge. Make sure they show all of their work on our inquiry sheets. And then they'll select a spokesperson so that we can come together at the end to share how we solved the inquiry. And then again, we have kind of some more guidelines and sentence stems here so that we can facilitate really positive discussion in our class so that students can talk about how they solved it, how that worked, why they might agree with what another group did, why they might not agree. And so this really allows us, so even if a group didn't quite come to the correct solution of our inquiry here, that this can still be a learning experience for them. They're not just told they're wrong, they're right, but they're figuring out why this worked and why maybe this didn't work, why you could solve this in different ways, and so on. And then just to make sure that we're really clear about the correct solution, since there can be multiple ways to solve it, since some groups may not have quite gotten there, and so on. To make sure we're clear, then either the teacher can explain the solution at the end, we could have a student explain the correct solution, or maybe while the groups were already presenting, maybe one of them already presented the correct solution. And then finally, to wrap it up, we just have some reflection questions. So a couple questions that are directly related to the math concept that they were practicing, and then some questions just to reflect on the inquiry process as a whole. And then once we're done with our inquiry, we align these to our adaptive practice. So then students can log on and it tells them what domain they're working on. So this one was in numbers and base 10. And on the first day of the inquiry-based lesson, we'll be doing adaptive practice. For the future inquiries, so for day 2, day 3, however many days up until the last day, they'll be working, for all the days they'll be doing adaptive practice. The day before the last day, they'll be doing assigned practice. And that is it. So that is day 1 of a lesson. Again, each one is 3 to 5 days. That's the presentation that you can display on your projector. And then I'll show you the inquiry sheet over here under resources. So I just click on this inquiry sheet. This is what you'll be passing out to your students so that they can develop the question here. And it gives them any key information they might need and a place to show their work. So as you can see, this has all the 5 countries that the video was referring to, and then 2 lakes in each of these countries. And from there, they can go ahead and figure out which of these are the deepest lakes and plan that scuba diving trip. So again, you can just go ahead and print this. You can print one and then make copies for your class. So super easy prep. Again, all we had to do is go through and just review, make sure that that we know what's going on in this inquiry ourselves, make sure we review the presentation, and then print out the inquiry sheets, and we're ready to go with our lesson for the day. So that's how inquiry-based lessons work at Front Row. I now want to give you a chance to ask any questions that you have, and again, you can type those in, as some of you already have, into the chat bar on the left-hand side. I'm going to take just a minute to look at those here. If any other questions come up, you can email us at support@frontrowed.com, and we'll be sure to answer those that way as well. And thank you guys for all you do in the classroom. I look forward to hearing about your experiences with inquiry-based lessons. So make sure to share those in our Facebook group and on Twitter.